Welcome back to the Blue Chip Breakdown, Vols fans and other college football fans. I'm your host, Bull, and in today's video, we're going to be taking a look at what the college football playoffs might look like after championship week. We're also going to take a quick glance at what the bowl selection process is like and where I think some of the top SEC teams will end up at in their bowl games, and especially where my Tennessee Volunteers are probably going to be ending up at. So without further delay, let's go ahead and take a look at what the selection process looks like for the SEC. All right, so this is an article from SEC Sports. This is from last season. It's just breaking down the way that the selection process works for the SEC when they're selecting bowl games. Now, different conferences are going to have just about the same selection process. Basically, what we have right here is that each conference is going to have contracts with different bowls. The SEC has 6 contracts with 9 different bowls. And as I'm scrolling through here, if you want to kind of pause it and read at your own pace, please do so, just to kind of help you get up to speed on how the selection process works. But, it's just basically with these contracts, there's going to be years where certain bowls are going to be able to select the first non-eligible playoff team or, the highest ranked non-eligible playoff team. And then, there is a ranking order of which bowls get to select after that. And that's pretty much how it goes. And outside of that, these bowls are going to be looking at the teams that are, closest to the region of where the bowl is going to be played at. And then they're going to be taking a look at what the matchups are going to look like in those prospective bowls. Is it a team that you've recently played or that you're going to play in the near future? Things like that would kind of mix up the way that the matchups are picked and who's going to go to which bowl. But in a nutshell, that's how it's going to look for each of the Power 5 conferences. So with that out of the way, now that we kind of understand how that whole deal works, I want to jump into what my top 25 is looking like going into the championship week. All right, so this is my top 25 heading into the championship weekend. I've got UGA at number 1, Michigan's at number 2, Washington's at 3, Florida State's at 4, Oregon at 5, Texas is at 6, Alabama is at 7, Ohio State's at 8, Missouri is at number 9, and Penn State is at number 10. And you can see that our Volunteers are at number 19. Now let's go ahead and take a look at the matchups in the championship week, and let's see who I have winning right there. All right, so starting off with the SEC, I have Alabama beating UGA. All right, so this one is going to be a very, very interesting game. Now, I've got Alabama beating Georgia because I think that Georgia's offensive play calling is very, very easy to predict. And I believe that most teams just have not been able to match up with Georgia at all this entire season. Really, no team has been able to physically match up with them, but Alabama can. So for that reason, I think that Alabama not only wins this game, but wins it by at least 2 to 3 scores, I would say. One of the caveats to this game is if Alabama does win, there's a good possibility that the SEC will not have a representative in the college football playoffs. And the SEC referees and everyone else is going to try to find ways to cheat and make sure that somebody can get into the playoffs from this conference. That's one of the big things for you to pay attention to if you're new to the SEC or you haven't watched much of our football. We do cheat for our teams and try to make sure that we can have someone in. So that's going to be very, very interesting.
And let them play. Let the boys play. Cheetah. Coach, come on. Cheetah. Coach. Go, 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 go.
All right, let's go ahead and move on to the next game, which is Michigan versus Iowa. Okay, so this is a game where, obviously Michigan and Iowa are both pretty good teams. Iowa is, a very run-heavy football team. Their offense is pretty bland. I think that Michigan will be able to dominate in this game. It's just so easy to be able to stop an offense that all they do is one thing. If Iowa had some wrinkles to their offense, or if they come out and try to pass the ball more, I think that this game could kind of get interesting, but they're more than likely going to stick to what they always do. So I've got Michigan winning this one. All right, next I've got Oregon beating Washington. So these two teams are very evenly matched. I think that they play similar brands of football. Oregon might have the slight edge on defense. They did play earlier in this season, and Washington won. That's the reason that I'm picking Oregon in this game, because I feel like it's going to be very difficult to beat a team twice in the same season, especially when you're so evenly matched. So expect for Oregon to come out and win it in a very, very close game. But again, I would not be surprised if Washington won right here. All right, now for the ACC championship, I've got Florida State beating Louisville. Now, this one could get interesting. Obviously, Florida State losing their starting quarterback, and they didn't look necessarily great up against Florida, but they also played in the Swamp at night, and that's a big rivalry game. So for those of you that don't know, the Swamp is one of the most difficult places to play in the entire country, especially at night. And I feel like for Florida State to be able to go on the road and win there, at night with the backup quarterback speaks a lot to how deep their football team is. And because I think that they're going to be able to out-athlete Louisville, I've got them winning this one. But again, I would not be surprised if Louisville was able to pull off the upset here. Obviously, if that does happen, a lot of things are going to get shaken up in the college football playoffs. I'm rooting for every team that's supposed to win outside of Georgia, just because I don't want Georgia to get into the playoffs again, because I feel like whatever team comes out of the SEC is probably going to be able to win the whole thing. I just don't see very many other teams matching up well with them outside of Texas. Florida State could have an outside shot, but again, they just don't have their starting quarterback, and it's going to be really tough for them to be able to beat these teams in a playoff situation. So let's go on to the next game, which is the final game, and that is Texas versus Oklahoma State. I've got Texas winning this one for the Big 12 title. Again, very, very interesting. Okay, I would not be surprised if Oklahoma State was able to pull off this upset here. But what I will say is Texas has been playing well all season. I really believe in what they're doing. Offense, defense, special teams. They're really good in all three phases of the game. Now, if they do win, and if they barely win, and if Alabama comes out and dominates up against Georgia, I do see a small possibility that the playoff voters could go ahead and bump Alabama ahead of Texas, even though Texas beat Alabama head-to-head. Now, I know that that's kind of a far cry, but if you look at the way that this season has played out, right? Texas and Alabama played early on in this season, and Alabama has looked a lot more dominant as the season has gone on. I feel like they're a much more complete football team at this point in the season. And I would say that Texas is about the same team as they were whenever they played up against Bama. I think if those two teams played today, Alabama wins that game. But, I don't know what the voters are going to do in this situation. If it comes down to that, I would have to say that more than likely Texas is going to have to get in, because there'll be such a uproar if Alabama gets in over a team that they lost to this season. So that's going to be really, really interesting. I think that both of these teams not only need to win, but they need to try to win in a very dominant fashion, or at least in the most dominant fashion that they possibly can, to ensure that they can get into the Final Four. All right, so if everything plays out the way that I have it planned out, this is what my top 25 will look like after the championship weekend. So I've got Michigan at 1, Florida State at 2, Oregon at 3. Texas more than likely is going to be at 4, but like we kind of talked about, there is a small possibility that Alabama could end up at number 4, and if that does happen, then I've got Texas at 5. But if Texas is at 4, I've got Bama at 5, okay? After that, I've got number 6 is Georgia, and then I've got Ohio State at number 7, Washington's at 8, Mizzou's at number 9, and outside of those, everyone else is the exact same as, what I had going into the championship week. Now, Tulane is a team that will also be playing in a conference championship. It's going to be interesting to see what happens if they win, because a lot of these other teams obviously will not be playing. So if Tulane does win, do they get bumped up? And if they lose, do they get bumped down? And are they bumped out of the top 25? I could see a situation where if Tulane happens to lose, that they do get bumped out of that top 25, and then you have someone else slide in. But more than likely, if they win, I think that they may just kind of stay put where they are for now. All right, now let's take a look at CBS's bowl projections for this season. I think this will be an easy way for me to kind of highlight where some of these different SEC teams are going to be going bowling at. So obviously you can look at their top 4, and where mine is different. I've got, I've got Bama or Texas here, and I've got Georgia outside of that, and everything else pretty much stays the same. So let's just kind of scroll down. This is where things will start to get interesting at, especially if there's no SEC team inside of the playoffs. We're going to start off right here, okay, at the Orange Bowl. So I think that the Orange Bowl would select Alabama, and then, we're going to get Alabama versus Ohio State. I think that matchup is going to kind of hold true, and that is going to be a hell of a game. That's going to be really, really interesting. So I hope that kind of does match up that way. And then after that, I've got Missouri getting bumped out of the Peach Bowl. I've got Georgia going there. Obviously with the Peach Bowl being in Georgia, I think that is a good fit right there. And, you get Georgia versus Penn State. I think that could be, somewhat interesting game. And then right up under that in the Cotton Bowl, I've got Missouri sliding into that slot. Now, if Washington does end up there, I think that would be a really, really good game. So already looking like we'll have a really good bowl season just based off of those few games. Now, as you continue to kind of scroll down here, right here, you've got Ole Miss going to the Citrus Bowl, and I think that kind of is going to stay where it is. I actually think that all of these down here are going to stay where they are. The only ones where I start to see a mix-up at is the Music City Bowl. We could see the Tennessee Volunteers sneaking there over Texas A&M. Now, I'm not 100% sure if the Music City Bowl or if the Gator Bowl gets to select first, but I would say whoever does get to select first will more than likely want to take Tennessee for their bowl game. And I would have Tennessee playing up against Wisconsin in that Music City Bowl. And then if you go down to the Gator Bowl, I would still have Tennessee playing up against North Carolina. So that's about the way that I think that our bowl season will shape up. All right, so I know that I did not get to everyone's teams, but I wanted to make this video as quick as possible, and I just kind of wanted to highlight how the bowl selection process works. Again, the way that the SEC selects is going to be very similar to the way that the other Power 5 conferences are going to select their teams for their bowls as well. But, you know, that's about the way that I think things are going to shape up and shape out. We'll see as this week kind of goes on. Obviously, a lot of things can happen. If Alabama wins and if Texas wins, things are going to get crazy. You know, what if Florida State loses? That's going to throw a big wrench into it. If Florida State loses, does Georgia sneak back into that top 4? Do they try to put the Buckeyes in there? You know, does Washington get a shot at it? So many different things can happen, but with the way that I have it played out, you know, I've got Tennessee either going to the Music City Bowl or to the Gator Bowl. And, you know, I think that we're probably going to stay put regardless of what happens anywhere else. So that's about what we're looking like, Volunteer fans. We'll see how it all shapes up. Hope that y'all like this video. Please make sure to like, subscribe, hit that notification bell, share it with your friends, family, other Volunteer fans, other college football fans, and we'll see y'all in the next one. Thanks. Peace.